The Ghoul stars occupy a strange and almost uncomfortable position within Imperial cartography. They are not unique in being unexplored, nor in possessing a reputation of danger, but in the particular form of silence and dread associated with them sets them apart from other frontier enclaves in the galaxy. Officially, the Ghoul stars form a broad swathe of space far from the galactic northeast, bordering the Imperium but effectively beyond its consistent reach. They represent a domain that, even in an age of near-infinite darkness, feels fundamentally wrong. Explorators return from them changed, or do not return at all. Administratum records show repeated attempts at colonization, mapping, or assessment, but their entries taper off into fragmented references, recovering logs without survivors, and reports quietly locked away. In a galaxy where even the worst horrors can still be categorized, classified, and combated, the Ghoul stars stand out because they largely refuse to be known. The absence of information itself becomes a warning. Historically, Imperial awareness of the Ghoul stars predates the Great Crusade. The Old Knight era saw scattered human populations flee to the edges of the galaxy, seeking isolation from collapsing interstellar order. Many such migrations ended in stagnation or extinction, but some seeds survived. The problem or the mystery lies in what those human fragments encountered once they settled among the Ghoul stars. Later Imperial rediscovery suggested that these populations suffered catastrophic degeneration. Certain records referred to twisted evolutionary divergence, as though local pressures or some unknown ecological force forced rapid and violent alteration of biological forms. Others hint that contact with the native entities drove madness and mutation. None of this can be verified to a definitive standard, but even Space Marine expeditions have returned unwilling to provide details. From the perspective of Imperial historiography, that lack of detail is telling in itself. In the centuries that followed the Great Crusade, the Imperium attempted several structured exploration pushes, often backed by rogue traders who believed the region might yield resources or archaeotechnology. The consistent pattern is one of initial optimism, followed by silence, then only fragments, Vox recordings filled with incoherent panic, heavily redacted transmission transcripts, or recovery reports noting ships found adrift, with crew missing or transformed. The ecological footprint of the region appears wrong. Explorators describe dead systems, derelict structures, and a sense of prior occupation without clarity as to who or what occupied them. Some return with evidence of stellar-scale devastation, worlds glassed by unknown weaponry, remains of vast orbital structures, or moons hollowed out for reasons that remain unclear. These elements imply a non-human intelligence of extreme technological power, but one that is unaligned with the needs, ambitions, or recognizable behavior of the wider galactic powers. There are numerous recorded entities associated with the Ghoul stars, but almost none have been confirmed. Several Xenos species are named in scattered Imperial analysis, including Siren, Vorg, and Slith, but these are little more than labels, lacking biology, sociological studies, or verifiable encounter. Adeptus Mechanicus rhetoric suggests that these entities lie outside the familiar taxonomies of Warhammer 40,000 xenology. Most known races fit into patterns: predation, consumption, conquest, expansion. The Ghoul stars contain species that appear to act without conventional motives. Some destroy and leave nothing, some spread psychic contamination that erodes minds without physical invasion, others depart systems already conquered, as though the invasion itself was incidental rather than strategic. To the Imperium, which relies on categorization as the first step towards militarized response, this confounds doctrinal logic. The most documented cases concern the Sons of the Emperor's Hand, within the Death Spectres chapter of the Adeptus Astartes. Their fortress monastery lies close to the region, and they have spent centuries acting as both watchmen and first responders to anything emerging into Imperial space. Their behavior, culture, and recorded battle suggest an organization shaped not by glorious crusade, but ongoing containment. Their oaths revolve around isolation and vigilance. They deploy rarely outside the region, and they speak little when they do. Other chapters acknowledge them, but even among the Space Marines, they are regarded with a measure of distance. It is widely theorized that whatever they have encountered within the Ghoul stars has fundamentally shaped their operational philosophy. In a galaxy known for war, it is telling that this particular chapter appears defined not by conquest, but by the unspoken fear of what would happen if they were not present. Attempts to analyze the Ghoul stars within broader galactic context lead to thematic parallels rather than specific answers. The Imperium accepts, even normalizes, daily exposure to horror. Chaos-warped entities, Tyranids stripping galaxies of biomass, Necrons awakening beneath tomb worlds. Yet these things have classification pathways and threat modeling. The Ghoul stars raise the possibility of yet unidentified races or forces that either predate major galactic civilization or exist within a technological or psychic paradigm completely alien to existing understanding. If the Tyranids appear extragalactic, then the Ghoul stars appear extrastructural, entities or forces that behave as though the laws governing other species do not apply. In a setting where certainty is rare, the Imperium treats this region with extraordinary caution. There is a recurring narrative motif in Imperial records that certain encounters within the Ghoul stars do not merely threaten physical destruction, but epistemic failure. AdMech records discuss cognitive corrosion across multiple machine translation records. The implication is that exposure to certain artifacts, signals, or environments result in a breakdown of the ability to interpret sensory input. That may be psychic influence, non-linear information encoding, or technological methods beyond current frameworks. If this is true, then it explains why no lasting Imperial foothold has ever been maintained. A battle can be won, an enemy can be purged, but if the region systematically erodes understanding itself, then the Imperium's usual method of extracting knowledge through experience becomes ineffectual. There is also an intriguing question regarding the potential connection between the Ghoul stars and other mysterious elements of the galaxy. Some writers have speculated that this region may connect to the architectural aftershocks of the War in Heaven, the ancient conflict between the Necrons and the Old Ones that shaped the entire galactic biosphere. It is possible that the entities in the Ghoul stars are remnants or secondary developments from the Cataclysm. Alternatively, this may represent a region where warp space and real space exhibit unusual entanglement, creating evolutionary pressures unseeded elsewhere. Official law is silent on this, but the thematic resonance is notable. In the Old Night, humanity scattered into regions where the warp storms raged unchecked. Some enclaves became prosperous, others devolved into techno-barbarism. The Ghoul stars may house the worst-case outcome. Although the Imperium avoids the region, there are hints that other factions possess interest in it. The Eldar seldom speak of the Ghoul stars, but this absence itself is revealing. The Necrons have not mounted large-scale campaigns into the area, but certain dynasties appear to monitor it rather than ignore it. The Orcs, who generally expand towards any promising battleground, show little inclination to invade. Even the Tyranids, a species whose behaviour is consistent across the galaxy, appear to bypass the region with minimal incursion. It is difficult to argue that all major powers avoid the Ghoul stars through coincidence. Rather, the simplest interpretation is that the region contains forces so hazardous that even the survival-driven Tyranids find them not worth consuming. Some narratives describe the Ghoul stars as being quiet now, but not forever. The Imperium's cautious border patrol, the Death Spectre ongoing vigil, and the Mechanicus sensor arrays all suggest preparations for an event rather than the assumption of stability. The Imperium lives in a state of perpetual underestimation, forever discovering crises that should have been anticipated. In this context, the Ghoul stars represent a rare case where the Imperium is actively cautious before disaster fully manifests. This may be a product of hard experience. Each time the Imperium has attempted to probe too deeply, it has suffered. This cycle of lesson and response has created an institutional memory, not intelligence but reflex. From a thematic standpoint, the Ghoul stars highlight an understated dimension of Warhammer 40,000, that the galaxy is not fully known. Despite millennia of conquest, colonization, and catastrophe, The Imperium operates within a limited map. Certain regions remain blank not because they are unreachable, but because something inside them resists comprehension. In most works of science fiction, mystery invites exploration and ultimate resolution. In Warhammer 40,000, mystery is an active hostile force. It waits, it erases. It teaches that the universe does not bend to discovery, but punishes it. This leads into a more personal reflection on the Ghoul stars and their place in the lore. There is a unique quality to this region that sets it apart from other threats. Chaos is loud, overt, and endlessly self-destructive. The Tyranids are predictable in their biological imperative. The Necrons and Eldar are ancient powers with clear lines of motivation. But the Ghoul stars embody the disturbing possibility that some threats cannot be understood, bargained with, or fully articulated. In that sense, they represent one of the few examples of cosmic horror in the setting that remains intact. There is no big reveal, no definitive faction codex, no spotlight campaign that answers all the questions. The Ghoul stars are haunting precisely because they remain undefined. The sparse details we do have are uniformly bleak. Speaking more informally for a moment and in a more conversational tone, I think what makes the Ghoul stars interesting is that they represent a piece of Warhammer 40,000 that hasn't been over-explained. A lot of the factions in the setting eventually get fleshed out, and once you know the history, the technology, and the ideology of the civilization, the mystery begins to fade. The Ghoul stars stand out for me because they are largely unexplored. We hear about expeditions that go wrong, colonies that disappear, and strange Xenos that don't behave like anything else in the galaxy. The takeaway for me is that even in a setting full of galaxy-eating monsters, there are still places that feel dangerous simply because they reject understanding itself. I also think it makes the Death Spectres one of the more intriguing Space Marine chapters. They aren't defined by being glorious crusaders or avenging angels, but being custodians of a threat nobody wants to face. If the Imperium is willing to leave a region alone and maintain a permanent watch, rather than try to conquer it, that alone says something about the scale of the danger, in my opinion. One can argue that the Ghoul stars function as a narrative pressure valve. They represent a zone where future story developments can erupt without contradicting prior lore. If a new Xenos civilization is introduced, it can plausibly emerge from this region. If an ancient weapon is discovered, the Ghoul stars provide a suitable origin. Their very lack of definition allows Games Workshop and its writers to preserve the sense of an incomplete mapped universe. This aligns with the setting's deeper cosmology. Humanity is not merely losing the war, it never fully knew the battlefield. Ultimately, the Ghoul stars endure as one of the most effective narrative constructs in the Warhammer 40K verse. They remind both the Imperium and the reader that ignorance is not merely a weakness, but a condition enforced by the environment. Knowledge is not withheld because the Imperium lacks ambition, it is withheld because the act of learning itself extracts a cost. The galaxy beyond the light of the Astronomicon is not merely hostile, it is older, stranger, and not designed for human minds. The Ghoul stars demonstrate that some frontiers should remain uncharted, not because the Imperium lacks courage, but because even victory may yield answers that unravel the victorious. This archive has now been fully decoded. Continue your journey with the video displayed on screen. The vast wealth of the archives continues to reveal new knowledge of the dark history of the 40K verse. In the grim dark of the far future, there is only war.